You're listening to the Australian Hunting and Beyond podcast with Matt, where we talk about hunting, shooting, fishing, camping, and everything else that the great outdoors has to offer. Let's get into it. Hi everyone, I thought I'd let you all know that if you want to see the images of this unreal red stag featured in tonight's episode, go check out the video of the podcast on YouTube as they're embedded there. Just search Australian Hunting and Beyond, or one word. Make sure you give us a like and subscribe on YouTube whilst you're there. Alrighty, let's get into it. All right, I am absolutely super excited about this one tonight because I have seen photos, I have heard about it from so many different people, and it's a big one. And I mean that in the true sense of the word. Tony Saros, thank you for coming on the podcast, and I cannot wait to hear this story.
Yeah, mate. Thanks for having me on. Mate, I got to say, it's been a few years since I shot this fella. It was back in 2017, and any opportunity I get to brag about it, don't worry, I'm the first one to do it. So happy to tell anyone who's prepared to listen, and probably tell them twice if they want to hear it.
Mate, I don't look. He's huge. So can we, before we get into the story, can we just set the, I guess the context of what he is so that the listeners know where we're going and what they're about to hear?
Yeah, well, look, I shot a massive red stag that I didn't quite realise what it was until I put my hands on the antlers and thought, God, how big could they possibly get? Surely this is as big as they get. And, I just shot a monster free range. I've been hunting that property for a number of years and nothing like that's ever walked out before. And it was private land, but, it's the biggest red stag that's ever been measured officially. So, look, it could very possibly be bigger ones out there that haven't been measured, or the person didn't know to get it scored or think otherwise. I couldn't say, but officially measured, it ranks as the highest scoring red stag ever. And like I like to tell people, it's actually the biggest antlered deer on the continent of any species. When you put it in perspective of how big the antlers are, well, that's free range I'm talking about. There could be behind wire ones that could be bigger. I'm not too sure. But having said that, the beauty of this animal in particular is its symmetry, and hence the scoring so well. It literally has counterpoints on every point and very little deductions. In fact, each point's nearly the same size on each side, and hence why every bit of antler almost is measured, which is where the downfall of a lot of great heads get, where they're missing a tine or broken point or something where they get zero for something that would have scored well if it had its opposite. This one's got the lot. Yeah, nothing's missing, and went scorecard. Yeah, I'll send you through a photo of that later, but it's as good as you could ask for. And look, I'm not all about the score at all. Let's just make that clear from the start. But once I saw what was laying in front of me, and I've been hunting for 40 years, I don't think I've ever had an official head scored before, just for the sake that I knew it wasn't anything special. But this one I had to find out. It was just such a big animal that I had to give it justice, not so much myself, but the animal justice to get it measured. And, lo and behold, he's the biggest one scored in this country.
He's huge. And you'll see the photos. I know it's a podcast medium, so it's sort of hard to see, but I'll have the photos on social that, Tony, you've already sent across. The one where you've got him caped out on your back. Holy hell, just the length of his head. Get the antlers. The antlers are huge. We know that. But the head size, oh, my God.
Yeah, look, everybody says that because I've got a big head myself, and they say, Jesus, look at the size of that thing compared to the size of your head. And that in itself gives it the justice it deserves. Yeah, look, it is a very big animal itself. There was no two ways about it. And the taxidermist himself said that he literally had to slim down an elk form for the size of its actual skull. I only had the skull cap given to him, but the size of the cape, he needed to slim down an elk form to do that head because it was big. And I have shot an elk, a couple of them actually in North America. And look, he's not as big in the face, but not far off it. to the point where you can see why the taxidermist went down that path. So, yeah, no, monstrous animal. Monstrous all over, body-wise, everything.
Yeah, you can see that. It's huge. How many points did he have on?
Look, if you're including little basal snags, which coincidentally have opposite basal snags, so that's just how well this guy scores. Even his basal snags have counterparts. He's got 22 points all up, but looking at the animal, you'd say it's an 18-pointer.
Yeah.
9 on each side. So
he's unreal. I've heard about him so many times, and so many people have been requesting to get you on to hear the story because it's just such a cracking animal. And everyone that sees it's just absolutely blown away in person. So I think the photos you can tell quite comfortably, but I haven't had the pleasure to see it in person. But everyone that has, man, they just go, how unbelievably good this animal is.
Yeah, look, you're welcome to come and have a look at him. I have taken him to a couple of like an ADA meeting, and there was a gun shop, Deer Fever Day. I took it to that. And look, it's only when you actually get him down off the wall, like he looks big on the wall, don't get me wrong, but you get him down off the wall and try to put it in the back of the ute, which is no mean feat in itself now that it's mounted, and literally stand alongside it, it really does show how big this guy is. He's a brute. There's no two ways about it. And yeah, the people that have seen it have been in awe of it. You know, look. The bottom line of this whole story is, yeah, I'm a keen hunter and I'm keen and I get out as often as I can, even at my age. But I was just in the right place at the right time. It could have easily been another hunter or another guy that has access to that property, but it was my lucky day. Anyway, you cut it.
Mate, that's hunting, isn't it?
Well, it is. You got to be out there. You can't shoot them from your lounge room. But
yep.
You make that. Well, I can't. And at the end of the day, I do recall the day. Actually, the evening before, we're on the drinks with a few guys, and we had our. We weren't sure if we were going to go the next day or not, and I was keen. I got myself a little bit fit for that upcoming Raw. In fact, I actually got drawn in the Blom Bay Hog Deer ballot. The Snake Island one was the first ever year they had Snake Island, and I was doing everything I can to get myself fit for that hunt, which was coming up in May for myself. And I was right in the middle of getting myself into purple patch of being fit, and I was keen as mustard to not miss out on this opportunity to go red deer hunting because so many weekends were tied up coming up the hog deer hunt. I had a fallow rut. And this was probably one of my only chances I was going to get to have a look at some reds close to the rut. And as much as the other guys who got on the drink, I got them all up at 4 a.m. because there was 3 other guys that came with me, and so I had 3 witnesses, and they were all sort of give it a miss. Nah. I said, nah, we're going. I said, this is my last chance to have a crack at a red for this year during the rut. So I got them all out of bed and we went, and glad I did.
Yeah.
That was the faithful day, that's for sure.
All right, so let's get into the story because I'm sure people are dying to hear about this.
Yeah. So, as I said, we got these other mates of mine up, and one of them is the one that actually had access to the property. He had a phone call from the farmer. Well, when he made contact with the farmer to go for a hunt that weekend, he'd said that, look, he'd seen a couple of big fellas running around the way. And when he relayed the story to me, I sort of took it with a grain of salt. Most farmers say there's thousands of pigs out the back, or thousands of this, or hundreds of that, or big ones of these, and that a farmer just put a little bit of salt and pepper on things. So I just took it with a grain of salt. Would he know a big one from a small one, etc.? Regardless, we're going for a look. And I had hunted on that block a few times before, and some nice reds had been taken there. But when we got ready to go to this on the hunt, we timed it so we'd actually get there literally in the pre-dawn. So we didn't actually camp on the place. We were staying in town. Went out to the property and, literally got through the main gate with barely the light breaking in the distance. So already geared up, ready to go, get the guns out. Only 2 of us were carrying rifles. The other 2 were just there for support, you could say. Anyway, literally within a 100-metre walk from the car, we're actually up on some pretty high ground already, which is the way I like to hunt a lot. I like to keep up high, early in the morning. So if the thermals are rising, I'm above where the thermals will be. And we're walking along this ridge top, and I thought I heard a roar. And I stopped the guys. I said, "Guys, did you hear that?" They all looked blankly at me and said, "No, I never heard a thing." I said, "Oh, mate, I'm sure that was a roar coming right down there." He goes, "Oh, we're heading down that way anyway, so we'll see what happens." And we wouldn't have walked another 30, 40 metres, and there was a solid roar, and they all heard it. I said, "Yep, definitely a stag down that way. Let's go and have a look." So by this time, dawn's just cracked. We're walking along the ridge, being a bit careful not to spook any, kangaroos or other deer or anything else on the way, because this place does have goats and pigs and even fallow on the same block. Anyway, moving along as quietly as four people can. The roars were coming quite regularly, but always in the same vicinity. But because we were approaching closer, they were obviously getting a little bit louder. I would guess, we're probably a kilometre away from where it was roaring, maybe a little bit closer. So we stayed up as high as we could for as long as we could. And then we had to start settling down towards a creek because the roar was definitely coming from the other side of that creek. Still a fair way down. Anyway, after not spooking some roos and a few other things and letting them move off, we continued on. And occasionally you would hear another roar in the distance from another red stag, obviously, which gave us hope that we had a couple to look at. We continued down, literally in a beeline. The wind was pretty much inexistent at this point, other than whatever thermals would have been coming up. We continued sort of in a beeline towards it, crossed over this creek, continuing towards it until we come to, because this was a very forested sort of area, but we knew there was clearings down where this stag was roaring from. In fact, we knew there was a big wallow down that way from other times that we'd hunted here. So I think from the original plan was to go and head towards that wallow and start our hunt from there. But as it turned out, with the roaring happening, and we changed the plan, we're heading that way regardless. Anyway, we walked down and just crossed the creek and came to the edge of a big clearing. And we're now reasonably close to where we could hear this roaring, but you could tell the roaring was still in bushland. It wasn't out in the clearing. But we're on the edge of the clearing. Thought, we'll just sit here and we'll watch for a little while. This thing's not spooked. It's carrying on. We never had to roar back at all because it was doing it all by itself. No one's seen this animal yet, by the way. Anyway, we, after probably felt like a long time, but it's probably 5 minutes max, a few hinds started to trickle out. And they started to trickle out into that clearing sort of alongside the edge of the creek. In fact, they had a little cow fence they had to cross through, and they were all popping through this fence one after the other. And I thought, this stag's pretty close to where we could hear him roaring. He's going to be following these girls out for sure. Like, it was almost a given that was about to happen. And up until this point, we've probably been hunting for 45 minutes less, or certainly under an hour. So it's very early in the hunt yet. And the hinds just kept popping through and popping through and popping. And I never actually counted them, but there was no less than a dozen, probably 15, 16. So a big harem of girls. And we'd like to think that if there's a harem that big and there's a stag roaring, he's going to be a half decent one. At that point, Craig, one of my friends who I was with, he said, "Why don't we just head up a little bit higher up here? You can get a good rest against that tree there. If he does come out and he's a good one, you'll have a rest to take him on." I said, "Yeah, that sounds like a good idea." So we crawled up to this tree, not to spook the does, and these does were probably 150 metres away. So we crawled up to the tree, and I looked over the girls with the binoculars there and then, and put them back down, and I was sort of getting to the point where, is this guy going to walk out, or do we need to roar now, or to think that there's another stag near his girls? We weren't too sure. Just at that very moment, a roar came out and he appeared. And this is a little surreal, to be quite honest, because there was no time to even put the binoculars on him to look at his antlers. And I'm pretty happy to say I'm glad I didn't, because I don't know if I would have turned to jelly or what would have happened. I would have got that much buck fever by doing that. And I just looked up, saw him roar, walk out, and Craig Craig just grabbed me by the shoulder. He pulled me down because I was sort of standing upright alongside the tree. He goes, put a bullet in that thing as quickly as you can. Anyway, I didn't need to be told twice. That was the biggest antler deer I'd ever seen, let alone the biggest red deer. Drew the rifle up, basically freehand, a little bit of a lean against the tree with my left shoulder, shooting right-handed. And I estimated it's at least 120, 130 metres away. So I probably aimed a touch higher than I should have. Fired the shot and he poleaxed. So as it turned out, I'd hit him through the spine and he wasn't going anywhere. He didn't really take another step, but he was still alive. So I did have to put a finishing shot in him. But the moment he went down, seconds later, a massive back slap on the back, and Craig's turned to me and he said, mate, that thing's got more points on it than my credit card. Anyway, we thought we better sort of make our way down. We could see he was still alive, but not going to get up. So I had another round ready to go. And then when I probably got another 30 metres closer, I just said, I'll just put another one in him. So we put a finisher in him. And then we sort of broke into a run. We thought I had to go down and put our hands on these antlers because there was just, you could tell from the distance. I did put the binoculars up after he'd gone down to have a look at it and thought I should start counting the points. I said, why am I even doing that? Let's just get down there. Anyway, so basically turned into a half run to get down to where he was. And I was just mind blown. Just mind blown. Not so much because he had so many points on his head. It was just the weight of the head, like the thickness. Well, I was saying like Coke cans right through the beams. Yeah, just weight everywhere. And then you started to notice the symmetry, and then you're counting the points, and then that looks like that. And it was just a mind-boggling day. And I almost felt a little guilty because Craig was the one who had access to the property, and he'd never shot anything like that. And although he shot some really nice stags on the place, that was, as we know, exceptional. And, it was almost a bit of disbelief. We were that excited, couldn't have been happier. It happened quick, like within, I'm going to say, less than an hour from when we started hunting on that particular morning. It was nice and open in the clearing where he'd fallen. And an easy trek back to get the car and bring it in reasonably close. And whilst the other guys went to grab that, and we took a heap of photos first, of course. A fair bit of photography went on for a while there. Then I started a caping job on it, and I said to the guys, guys, don't rush me, don't do anything. I'm going to take as much time as I really want because I'm not going to put a single more hole in this thing. I want this to be a masterpiece, So I've caped dozens and dozens of deer out before, so it was not a challenge in any way, other than the fact it was so big. But yeah, I took my time and caped him out. And then that photo you said you see me carrying it back to the car from there, which wasn't a difficult carry out, I'll be honest with you. The car wasn't too far away then. By the time the boys had got it back, I pretty much had caped him out to the back of the head and did the rest of it back at home. Yeah, a fantastic day to say the least, mate. I can't pinch myself enough to think that I was the lucky one to shoot it. Not so much out of the four guys that were there, although Craig in particular who has access. With the little epilogue to that story, to the day, and this was I'm pretty sure it was the 19th of March in 2017 that I shot this fella, and Craig shot a stag that would rival the head that I shot exactly 12 months to the day later, which took a lot of the guilt away from me, at least, for shooting such a big one. He never bothered getting it measured, and there's a story within that. Needless to say, it's a magnificent head itself. Not quite as symmetrical as mine, but in other aspects, it's even more impressive. So, yeah. Shows what good genetics are in that area. There's no doubt about it.
I was going to say that I was lucky enough to have on Paul Rattray, who wrote Secrets of the Reds, and learn a heap of information about red deer from him and talking about that genetics. And, love seeing what he posts and talks about, I guess, farming almost the genetics, being selective in what you cull so the best genetics come through. Is that what has been happening at the property, or is it just lucky sort of thing?
No, not deliberately, but what I have been told, and again, I'm probably not the right person to tell you all the information about the property other than what's been told to me, but that place had been in years gone by. Sorry, not that place, but in the area there was a deer farm there in the 80s or 90s, and so there's no doubt there was good bloodlines brought in for antler growth or whatever else at that point. But that deer farm would not have existed since, at least the year 2000 that we're aware of. And I couldn't even tell you exactly where that property was in relation to this one, but I know I've heard that it was nearby. And look, that area's produced some cracking heads. In fact, I believe a couple in the top 10 have come from that area or that region, which is no real surprise. I think once you see this fella, he's obviously we had 15 plus does there, hinds there. He would have mated with, I'm sure, or certainly would have in the past. The thing that blows me away is where's he's come from, because we've hunted that property for a number of years and no one's picked up cast antlers or anything like that from him from previous years to think that, well, there's a big fella living here. He just appeared just like that. Like, it's unbelievable that he did, but yeah, crazy to think that those things exist. And look, it'll get rolled one day by someone, and I'm happy for it to happen as long as it's done, in fair chase and everything else. I'm all for it. I'd hate to think it was shot under a spotlight or even a thermal or something like that. Not that I'm anti any of them, each their own, but it'd be nice that it'd be hunted on foot daylight and not behind wire to be beaten. That'd be what I'd like to see if it does happen. And if it does, good luck to it. I mean, at the end of the day, I didn't grow the antlers. I was just the lucky one to harvest it. If there's bigger deer out there, well, good luck to the hunters who can get them for sure.
It's bloody awesome because it's so impressive. The animal's impressive, but just the fact that you can be out there and, as you said, you never saw a cast antler. You had no idea this big fella was around. I'm guessing there was no trail cam images, and then all of a sudden he's there.
Not that year, but Craig did put trail cameras up on that wallow, and literally 12 months of the day he shot his big stag, which is worth talking about because it's a massive animal itself. He was actually going in to check the trail camera when this stag jumped out of the wallow that he shot. And I'll have to send you some photos of that stag because it's quite impressive in itself. And he then has that stag on his trail camera literally 10 minutes before he shot it.
Yeah, right.
So it was on the trail. It was wallowing when it was on the trail camera, and then he sprung it out of the wallow and shot the thing. Yeah, so look, some big animals have come off there since then. Like even the same year that I shot mine, another friend of Craig shot a really nice big head that he got measured just out of interest, and it would have still made the top 50 of the ADA scoring. But funnily enough, I actually got it scored for him, and I've put the two heads side by side, like before they were mounted. They were just skull mounts. And you could almost put his antlers inside of mine, even though that would have made top 50. It just shows you how big, again, mine one was. And the first time I had my head scored, and this was probably within a week after I shot it, I took it to, I'd like to think a lot of people would know Michael Gibson, who passed away last year, Gibbo, one of the loveliest guys you'd ever meet, certainly one of the best red deer hunters you'd ever meet. And I contacted him because he was an official ADA scorer. And I said, look, before we do get this officially scored, which we have to wait the 60-day drying period, there's a few rules in place that needs to happen before you can get them officially scored. I said, do you mind throwing a tape measure over and just do a rough score? He goes, yeah, no, I'd be more than happy to. And he's taken a few reds that are in the top 50, some magnificent animals. In fact, he was a bit of inspiration to me to try to shoot a good red one day because he just seemed to have the knack and the right places to shoot some great animals. So I took it over to Michael's, and look, I don't know what it took to measure a head beforehand, but I can see what it takes to measure one now, and it's not something that takes 5-10 minutes. It literally took him 2 or 3 hours to do this thing, to do it as properly without it being official. And when we did the tally at the end, he says, I must have made a mistake because it was just so much bigger than what the current number one was at the time. So he thought, I'll just do some quick measurements again to see if, that's right. He's just looking at everything there, tallied it up again. Yep, it came out at 416 Douglas points. And I think the current Australian record at that time in 217 when I got mine measured was 389. And he'd shot some in the high 300s as well. And they were mounted on the wall, and he literally grabbed my set of antlers and put them alongside his reds, he goes, yep, I can see exactly where that extra numbers are coming from now when you physically put it alongside the other animals. Anyway, to further to that story with the scoring, because there is a bit of a story behind that. I'm not sure if you're aware or not, but what happened was it got officially scored by 3 official ADA scorers, and some really nice gentlemen did that. Charlie Muscat was one. Wayne Hogan, it was done at his house. He lives just down the south coast. And a gentleman from Rob Graham, he's come up from, I think, down at Eden, and he's a master measurer. So the 3 gentlemen met together. The 60-day drying period was over. They could now officially score it. Anyway, they rung me at the end of the day to come back and collect the head. And when I got there, they gave me the certificate. He goes, Tony, this is scores 416 and a bit. Douglas points, it's definitely the new number 1. Congratulations, all well and good. And I was tickled pink. Not the fact that it was number 1, but why me? How lucky could I be? I've never had a head measured before, let alone this one. Anyway, I went away as happy as Larry, and that was that. But strangely, and this is where it gets a little, you could call it controversial, about a week later I got an email from Robert Graham, who was the master measurer. He said, look, we've sent off photos and the scorecard down to the head of the ADA scoring trophy register, and they've examined the photos and the scorecard, and they feel we've made a mistake in the naming of one of your tines on the crowns of the antlers. So one was called an outer off back A, and this one was an outer off back B. And because they're not the same point, they don't counterpart, and therefore they had to revise the scorecard, and it brought it down to 401. And I said, oh, well, that's a bit disappointing. I said, you guys were 3 blokes in one room, and you just came up with that score, and this other people, well, panel, I think it was, are measuring a head off a photo, and they're claiming this point was named wrong, etc. I said, look, I can live with it. It's no big deal. It's at the end of the day, the antler's going to look exactly the same on the wall to me, so I don't really care. And I left it at that. A little bit annoyed, and all my hunting mates are all saying, no, you should challenge it as 416, it's 416, blah, blah, blah. And I said, look, it is what it is, whatever. It's a great head. It's not going to change what it looks like hanging on my wall. So I didn't really want to wait any longer because you can't get the heads mounted until the scoring's been finished. Part of the scoring criteria needs to be an unmounted head because they need to see if any alterations have been made to the skull to make it wider or whatever else. Anyway, so I sent it off to the taxidermist. I was past that now. And lo and behold, within 12 months, a gentleman, I think in South Australia, and I can't remember his name, but it's in the score register, he pulled an old head out of having not been scored ever before that he shot in 2010 and decided to get it scored, and it scored 404. And I thought, oh, damn. I said, it didn't even last 12 months at number 1 because the previous one was 389. I said, oh, well, it is what it is. I still didn't care. Although in the back of my mind, I was a little bit peeved. Anyway, lo and behold, the following year, the current number 2 scored 408. But this is where the controversy starts. The head that was scored 408 is a magnificent head, and I've seen photos of it. From what I've been told, and I can't probably say this on air, but I'll say it anyway, it was poached off the property that we hunt on. Now, unfortunately, the family of his surname that's the current number 2, which I'm sure most hunters would have heard about at some point, have got a reputation, and in fact, some of the family members have done some jail time over poaching in recent years and stuff like that. And I felt a bit dirty then that not only is this head that's now the number 1's come off the block that we had access to, so it wasn't technically taken legally basically taken by a poacher. The fact that it's now the number 1 sort of irked me a little bit. So I thought, no, you know what? I'm going to do something about that. So I wrote a letter to the ADA, and nothing to do with the other gentleman, I'll be honest with you, but just said to him, look, this is the score I got originally, measured by 3 official measurers, one of them a master measurer. Waited the 60 days, did everything that I had to do to get this scored correctly, and it got overruled off a photograph. Now, I'm happy to let that rest at 401 if the people that overruled that score off the photo have physically seen the head. I said, if they measure the head and they also come up with 401, then let bygones be bygones. That's what it scores, so be it. It doesn't really matter. But I'd hate to think that this head really should be 416, and a simple photograph has convinced them it's otherwise is probably not the way the scoring system's meant to be worked off. In fact, I've always been told, and if you read the ADA scorebook, which I have since, it does say that if you need to give a benefit of the doubt, always give it to the deer as far as the scoring system goes. So anyway, to cut a long story short, because this will go for hours if I keep it up, the head of the ADA scoring trophy register, Ted Waller's a nice gentleman who I made contact with him through the ADA after I wrote that email. He said, look, Tony, I'm more than happy to remeasure the head myself, but naming of the points can often happen incorrectly, blah, blah, blah. This is why this happens. But look, first opportunity we get, I'm happy to measure it. He lived in Ararat in Victoria. I live in Wollongong. So it wasn't quite that simple, but with my work, I travel around the state a fair bit. So he said, look, we do hold annual ADA scoring seminars in New South Wales. When the next one's on, I'll let you know. Well, unfortunately, all this time that's elapsed, then COVID kicked in. So none of those ADA scoring seminars went ahead for 2 or 3 years. And it never got rescored until literally this year. So true to his word, Ted messaged me, say, Tony, we're having a scoring seminar in Wagga. Is there any chance you can get that red down here so we can get a panel together and rescore this head? We'll score it from scratch and go from there. I said, look, yeah, keep in mind, I said the head's been mounted. I said, but no one's contradicting any measurements. It's just the naming of a point, really. He goes, yep, no, fair call. We'll have a look at it in person and go from there. So I did happen to have something on that weekend, but I moved heaven and earth to make sure I was going to clear the decks to take this thing down there. So I got up at 5 a.m. from here in Wollongong, squeezed this bloody head in the back of the ute, which is never an easy feat to do. Got him in there and drove down to Wagga and turned up there, and there was quite a number of guys there that were experienced scorers as well as novices that were learning how to score. And I must admit, when I pulled the head out to bring it in, they pretty much down tools. They all just wanted to turn around and have a look at this bloody thing because it was just something out of this world to a scorer, I would assume. And lo and behold, they went to work on it. It took them a couple of hours, rescored it. It did come up a little shorter than my original 416. It came up at 414, which, look, at the end of the day, you could probably score a head of that size half a dozen times and get within it 1 or 2 inches anyway, and they do allow, I think, a 10% error rate. So technically, if it was 416, it could have come down, take off 4 inches to 12 or whatever. I wasn't upset because it's now beaten that poacher's one as far as I was concerned. It was bigger than that, and obviously back at number 1. So the ADA put out an article in one of their this year's magazines to explain why this thing had to get rescored to some degree and whatever else. The naming of the times was confusing, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, but they reinstated it where it should have been all along anyway. So, yeah, there was a bit of controversy, and that went on for a number of years, and the amount of ribbing I was getting from all my mates about it in the period between being number 1 and then no longer number 1 and the score being deducted and this and that. To have it reinstated was a relief. It was a bit of a mission to make it happen. I did persevere only on principle more than anything else. Like I said, it wouldn't change a thing to me. It's a nice big head hanging on the wall. But because of that controversy, it's part of why Craig never got that really nice head that he shot the following year. He didn't bother to get it scored. It sort of irked him a bit. Politics got involved or whatever got involved to have it overruled. So he thought it was a little bit of a farce at the time and didn't bother. But he sort of wishes he does now that mine's number 1. He wants to sort of see how his would go against that, which, look, at the end of the day, they're just beautiful animals to hang on the wall. I've shot plenty of small animals that I've had mounted and love the look of them. They've all got a good story to them. This one's got a story based purely on the fact that he's so big. I've done lots and lots of harder and more difficult and challenging hunts than that red, as it turns out. But he's definitely a centerpiece that people love to talk about, no doubt about it.
I didn't know about the backstory of the scoring and the controversy there. So it definitely sounds like the King's back on top, which is I like to hear. I've finally got my hands on a product that I absolutely love, and it is super simple, but also so versatile to use. This means that you can tailor how you want to have your coffee when out in the bush. If you want to support the podcast and get an awesome bit of gear that I know you will love, and how you can use the code AHB podcast to get 10% off. The link can be found in the show notes, socials, and on the website. Final press, you'll love it. How much weight was in that head? Like, it fascinates me a lot when you think about these animals. They're just such beautiful creatures, and I'm always in awe of them. But the neck muscles that he must have to carry around that headgear is just unreal.
Yeah, look, I've always been fascinated by animals. Like, I've been lucky enough to hunt moose in Canada and elk over in the US, and certainly, this big red stag that I took. And I think to myself, it must be such a relief to this animal when they cast, because this thing hanging on their head all this time, and then to finally not have that weight, which happens suddenly when it's taken off. I realise that weight is an increment growth over a 3 or 4 month period. So they probably don't realise that extra weight, and they just build the muscle up to do so. But it always fascinates me how these things must feel the moment they cast these antlers. Look, what it would weigh, like carrying that head out with the cape on it, which was a decent sized cape, and I did cape him right back, like back to the pizzle, basically. I've always been told to do that for the taxidermists and whatnot. There's quite a bit of skin there, and obviously his large head and then massive antlers. But, mate, I'm telling you, I was that much adrenaline, that much excitement in carrying this bloody thing around. It didn't feel heavy. I mean, luckily I didn't have to carry it too far back to the car. And it might have felt a little different if I had to, uphill half a K or something like that. So it was no real strenuous effort in that sense. But you couldn't have wiped a smile on my face in a million years. And like I'd said at the start, I was actually on a bit of a mission to lose a bit of weight at the time and get a bit fitter for this hog deer hunt. And you couldn't have stopped me. I could literally carry the bloody whole thing out. I was that pumped about it. Yeah. But a big animal on the ground, like the whole thing, just. Look, I've shot a number of sambar stags, and they are monsters, as you're probably aware. They're a very big animal, and they're the king, there's no doubt about it. Moving in on a big-bodied sambar stag, which can be up to 300 kilos, I've heard, which I've never been in the position to weigh them. I've just carted back legs out, which is enough to kill you. So I'm thinking this thing was at least 250 kilos.
Yeah, right.
Maybe and look, there's a lot of guesstimation going on.
Yeah, of course.
But it was as big a body as you could imagine a deer to be outside of a sambar. I'd say a sambar is a bigger animal, no doubt. But with his headgear on and everything else, and his head was probably bigger than a sambar's head, and they're bloody big heads anyway, but this one had a very long head on him.
So you said you've been hunting for 40-odd years. How
40 years, yeah.
Yeah, how many years was it in? Like, how long had you been chasing red stags? I'm still chasing a raw, so...
Yeah, I've shot a few reds in the past, so on this property, but even I did many years ago, not long after I was married, which was in the mid-90s or early 90s, I had access to a place up in near Gympie in the Mary Valley up in Queensland.
Yep.
So I had hunted a few reds up there in the past, so they weren't like I'd never shot a red before, and they're always bloody good-looking antlered animals anyway. Even the average one, for argument's sake, quite a bloody attractive animal. I've always had a little bit of a fetish for the reds because of how magnificent their antlers are, but more importantly, the roar itself. Like, it's probably our best-sounding rut. I love the fallow rut, don't get me wrong, and I hunt rooster quite regularly near home. Fortunately, I've got a little place I can hunt down here, and hearing them roar is fantastic. But the reds are at another level. Like, it's very primeval is probably the best way to describe it. I've heard elk bugle, I've heard moose grunt. The elk bugle is, I must admit, pretty spectacular as well. But something, it's almost like it's violent, that red deer roar. Like they mean business when they're roaring, and it's such a great thing to listen to. But I shot my first red, I think it was back in 1992, was the first one I'd shot. This one I shot in 2017. So it's quite a distance apart from my first red to this one. Having said that, I probably didn't get opportunities to hunt red nowhere near as often after I moved, after I'd lost access to that place up near Gympie. So my focus really became on annual fallow ruts and sambar deer whenever possible. I loved the sambar. And they're still probably my favourite animal to hunt, but probably most frustrating, most challenging. And I think that's why it's the favourite. Never go anywhere near a 30 incher yet. 20, 26, 27 is about the best that I've got, but I can keep trying. But no, the red deer is, look, I'm never going to shoot an animal of that trophy class in any species ever again. Well, you can never say never, because if you keep getting out, then something might rock up. I mean, I'm seeing huge fallows shot nearly every year by various people, and I have got a good block where some really nice fallow have come off. So nothing's impossible, but I don't hunt for the size necessarily. Yeah, I'm a bit of a trophy hunter, and I like something decent to hang on the wall. Not that I don't utilise the meat and stuff. I definitely do that. I've got a family that's been eating venison for many, many years. So a couple of my older children have moved out of home, and with the cost of living these days, they're happy for me to provide as much venison whenever I go out. So I actually have that front of mind when I'm out hunting, that whatever I shoot here, we're taking the venison with us. So, but at the end of the day, yeah, trophy hunting's been a bit of a lifelong thing for me. It's hunting in general, because I happily go quail shooting or duck shooting, or any type of hunting is interesting. But there has been a desire to collect the trophies. There's no doubt about that. When I first started, when I was probably 17, 18, and I shot a wild boar, so I had to get a boar mounted, and then, well, if I've got a boar mounted, let's get a goat mounted. So I got a boar and a goat, and then don't know how it came about. I found out there was deer in Australia, and I said, righto, we better get one of them. Not realising there were 6 of them, and then it just snowballed from that. And then after buying a few hunting magazines, you've got to keep in mind there was no internet or anything like that back in the late 80s or mid 80s, and buying a few hunting magazines, and then seeing Nick Harvey going to Canada to shoot a moose just fueled me to want to do that. And that was my first ever overseas hunt, was for a Canadian moose. And then talking to people while I was hunting over there with other hunters in camp that had hunted Africa several times. So now Africa became a thing, and blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, I've been fortunate to have done a fair bit of hunting over a long time. And look, I'm no millionaire. I'm not one of these guys that can just throw money at these sort of things, but I probably put together, every 3 or 4 years enough aside to be able to do an international hunt, if you like, and obviously fill the years with local hunts in between. So, yeah, spoil myself once every 3 or 4 years probably. Maybe it's probably less on an average over 40 years. I don't think I've been away. Yeah, I have been to Africa 3 times, so I shouldn't say that it hasn't been a lot, but in North America 2 or 3 times for hunts. But yeah, I've had a ball doing it. It's been great, and enjoy it, for sure.
Was he your most memorable because of the outcome, or has there been like more memorable hunts for you?
Oh, definitely been more memorable hunts, in the sense where this one was memorable in itself because of the actual animal that hit the ground.
Yeah.
But it could have been a pig hunt, and I shot a massive boar at the end of the day. Like it did. I can't say. See, this is the problem. Well, not a problem. This is the thing. I didn't see this animal over and over again for years on end to think, it's just keeping me awake at night. I need to one day get him. It's the first time I've seen him, and I put a bullet in him 5 seconds later. Like it happened pretty quick. So yeah, in the sense of memorable, definitely the most impressive trophy in a house. Certainly from an Australian deer species. I think a big elk looks pretty impressive too. But my most memorable hunt that I feel was when I shot my first sambar stag, trophy sambar. So I've been hunting them for a very long time before I finally decked a trophy. So living in New South Wales, I'm driving down to Victoria at least annually from the early 90s or probably even late 80s, and shooting a few hinds, a few spikers, and missing a couple of stags. I literally moved to Melbourne. So there's a whole story in that itself. But I moved to Victoria to go to work where I work now. I still work for the same company. I moved down there just in my own head so I could be closer to hunting sambar on a more regular basis rather than biannually. I could go out every second weekend if I it's like what the public land hunting's like in Victoria. It's pretty accessible to anybody who's got a game license. So, and even then, it took me 5 years while I was down there to finally put the trophy stag. That's him in the corner there. And I must admit, I shed a tear. It was just like if you dated it from my first ever solo trip down in the Wannangata Valley to when I shot this guy, there was a 20-year gap. So, and I've done a lot of hunting in between. And like I said, I shot plenty of hinds and spikers and missed a few stags anyhow, and then shot fallow and done a few overseas hunts in between. So it wasn't like I didn't pull the trigger for 20 years. But to finally get a sambar stag, and like most things, once you get the monkey off your back, you start to roll a few of them and, you work them out. You know what's going on. You know the country backwards then. And I've shot 6 or 7 stags since sambar. But one sambar stag in particular that stands out, I didn't even pull the trigger. My nephew shot him, and he'd never shot a sambar before. And he'd come down to Victoria. He lived up here in Sydney, and he came down and even borrowed my rifle. And I didn't even take a rifle. I said, we'll just get him to shoot a deer. It'll probably be a hind, or I always see plenty of hinds. I said, and this was before the numbers had really exploded to what they are today. So this is back, I think, in 2010, 2011. And to cut to the chase, he rolled a massive sambar stag that I just got that excited about him shooting. And it wasn't long after I'd shot my first one that, that's probably one of the more memorable days that I could remember in the field. It was just, and I didn't even pull the trigger. So, but yeah, look, I've taken my daughter out. She shot a really nice fallow buck. It was almost a 250 scoring buck, and that's the first animal she'd physically pulled the trigger on. She used to do a bit of clay target shooting and a bit of target work, and one day she said, Dad, I want to come with you. And I said, well, we'll go next rut. And she was going to be happy to shoot a hind. And it was a big bunch of hinds, but I could hear this big buck croaking. And to cut to the chase, she put a bullet through its neck and poleaxed this. And I walked up to it and I thought, I've never shot a fellow that big. This is her first ever animal. She hadn't even shot a rabbit before. And here she is shooting bloody trophies. I've actually see that fallow buck on the corner there on a pedestal mount under the buffalo there. Yeah, so she'd taken that. So lots of memories, mate. There's plenty of memories. Hunting Cape buffalo in Africa is probably one of my favourite type of hunting you can do. I've done that a couple of times. Yeah, they're all memorable. They're all there for memories. Taken a couple of nice roosts locally in the last couple of years. I've only just got access to and shot a real cracking bumper down the coast a little bit. Yeah, just over the moon about that as well. So it's hard to put them into favourites. It's almost like you do with children. Like you love all of them to some degree or another. And look, I could walk around my trophy room now and tell you literally the date, certainly within weeks or certainly that month of the year that I shot that and what year it was, what rifle I used, each and every mount that's in the house. They all mean something to me, although I wouldn't have bothered to get them mounted, I suppose. And they're not all monsters, far from it. Some are just average heads that, people wouldn't bother getting mounted. They'd probably just get a Euro mounted or something like that. And I probably should have done that in hindsight. You'd save a fair bit of money doing it. But at the time, you're excited. You now learned how to cape properly. And so you throw all the tools in and away you go. I've probably backed off a little bit of late where I think I've run out of space more than anything else to hang the bloody things up. So, yeah, that's pretty much my story as far as hunting is concerned. But look, the red deer stands out as being the most magnificent animal you could hope to harvest of that species. There's no two ways about it. It's you'd be hard pressed shooting one like that free range in New Zealand, from what I've been told. And there's some crackers have come out of New Zealand, that's for sure. I know a lot of high wire fence hunting happens over there. And again, look, each to their own. I think hunters in general have enough enemies. We can't be piling on. If they choose to do that, their conscience is fine with it. Let them do whatever they want. Like, as long as it's not breaking the law, I don't have an issue with it. If it's not your cup of tea, then don't do it. If you don't like using a thermal, then don't. If you don't like using a rifle, you want a bow hunt, then don't. you're happy with whatever you do and it's perfectly legal to do so, then all us hunters should be united in that fashion. I can't see the point in piling onto each other, because it's not like there could be people reading or listening to this, I should say, and saying, well, he just trophy hunts. Well, I don't. I do utilise the meat. It's just I utilise it probably more than just a meat hunter, because I'm end up taxiderming the stuff as well. But if they were thinking that I'm purely hunting for heads, which I must admit is probably, well, certainly used to be the priority. That would be my goal, is to pass up a heap of animals to try to shoot a nice trophy. It's no different to them thinking that way, that you can't eat antlers, blah blah blah, which is totally true. And there's no doubt food should be the first and foremost reason that we do hunt. But again, if it's not the way you like doing it, then and it's not illegal, then why should anyone criticise it? People shoot foxes at night and cull kangaroos, or shoot a sack of pigs and dog pigs, which I did that for a little while when I was younger. It was a lot of fun at the time. Probably not my cup of tea today, but I enjoyed it when I did do it. If we're all out in the bush enjoying ourselves and not breaking the law, I think we're all doing everyone a service, from the farmers through to the environment itself, or us as providing for your family. Go for it. Yeah, enjoy. Get outside. There's too much indoor stuff for my liking these days. Look, I'm an older bloke. I look at the world today, probably different goggles to most up and young people like yourself, and I see things as, I don't think I'd like to be here in 50 years' time, because it won't be anything recognisable to what the last 40 years that I've lived, I think. But yeah, who's to know? Last thing I want to do is be negative about it. But yeah, look, I can remember as a little boy growing up in a small country town, my dad used to love duck season and quail shooting. He was a shotgunning man. And I remember going into school on the Monday, and people would put their hand up to say what news they had at school, and I thought, I went duck shooting with Dad on the weekend, and no one reeled back at the thought of that. I can only imagine if my children went into school and telling the teacher, we went and shot a deer or shot some stuff, they'd say, I don't think you should be bringing that up in class, and blah blah blah. That's the type of society I think we've created now, where certainly when I was a kid growing up, I think you were more of a hero if you went out and hunted your own food, versus now you're the villain for hunting. Anyway, it is what it is. I think it's more our country that feels that way. I mean, yeah, there's certain parts of the world that may do the same, but I don't think it's like that in New Zealand. I certainly wouldn't have thought it's like that in Europe from the times that I've been there. Hunting's quite a heritage over there. It's definitely not in Africa, and certainly not the US. So it's an Australian issue, and I'm sure there's other countries that do it, but Australian issue where we just all city slickers now and don't really understand how the life on the land is. Not much we can do about it. We can, just try and encourage. I say to everyone that I know that hunts, just introduce a young bloke into hunting. Take him under your wing. Even if you take him to your own spot, you're not going to shoot every animal yourself. Take him out, let him understand what hunting's about. Hopefully, show him how to do it ethically, and the more you can encourage, the better it is for our future. Because without the next generation, well, that's why we're going to fall in a heap. That's how I read it, from a political point of view, at least.
Yeah, I think I've spoken about that on the show a lot. Everything you just said is exactly what I think as well. One, doesn't matter what type of hunting you do. If it's legal and ethical, there should not be a problem with it. Every hunter should stand by each other because, like yourself and I'm not big on the trophy side of it. Like it's not something there that I'm passing up animals to get to a trophy, but I have no issue with yourself doing it. And hearing about the story, that makes me excited nonetheless. But it's not the top of my list, but that's cool. There's no issue with that. I still want to hear about it. I still want to see it occur. I love the fact that you can sit here and talk about, look at these animals. I can tell you the story about every single one, their memories. I've shot this animal here and pass that on to, telling us your daughter's fallow buck there. That's awesome. That is not something that just because it's not my first priority, I should diminish or think any less of anyone that does that. And I don't feel that way. So I think as a collective, we need to get better at doing that. Just because it's not your cup of tea or what you are wanting to do doesn't mean necessarily that we have to knock other people that do it, as long as it's ethical and it's legal. And again, when you start to talk about the future, I'm with you. I think, I am a bit younger, but as a teacher, I do my best. It's funny because I hear that about the stories going in and talking about hunting, and my young fella, talks about that at his daycare, and they know what I do. And as a teacher, I don't shy away from what I do, and my students know it, and other teachers know it. And I feel that when people actually talk about it and go through the process of it, that it's far more acceptable to people, because the majority of people, as you said, city slickers, growing up where food's just at the supermarket, not knowing where it comes from, that's changed. So when you talk about these things, that people, if they're listening, they get a bit more of an understanding and idea, because they haven't seen it. They probably haven't had too many people do it. So I'm always encouraging people to have that conversation in a respectful manner. I think that's the most important. If you're going to have those conversations, it's got to be respectful. Don't jump up and down swearing and calling names and things like that, because that does us all a disservice. It's got to be a nice conversation so that people, even if they don't agree, they go, oh, well, look at how he's presenting what he's doing. That's a positive.
That's very important. Yeah, look, I've got plenty of. I'm fortunate enough that I and coincidentally, people I went to high school with are still some of my closest friends. Their partners or wives, and my wife are all quite good. We even went on an overseas holiday together last year. So for 30 years or so that we've been friends. But they're definitely not right into hunting. A couple of them I'd taken hunting to see. Yeah, that one still has his shooter's license and would take it or leave it, or take his boys out occasionally. But in general, they've probably gone the opposite way and don't think hunting should be done or whatever else. But they know what I'm like, and I'm not going to stop now. Like, they're not going to convince me otherwise. And my argument to them generally is, well, if it was such a bad thing, one, it would probably not be legal. Two, even you people have known me for 35 years since high school. Would you call me a bad person? Is there a bad bone in my body? Obviously, you might think that I'm a bad bone in my body for killing animals for, let's call it, pleasure. I said, but in reality, you know me better than that. You wouldn't class me as a criminal or doing things that are against the law or other things. It's just that what gets my goat is I like to be in the outdoors and hunt. You guys have all like fishing and doing that. We're just doing it on different terrain with different tools. I said, you've got to look at it at that space. I said, oh, well, we could let our fish go if we wanted to, and that. I said, yeah, I'd pass up stacks of deer that you don't know about. You're only seeing the ones I have harvested if I've mounted them on the wall. If I didn't mount them on the wall, you would never know how many I did or didn't shoot. So at the end of the day, for all the fish you threw back, I probably passed up dozens of animals that you're not aware of, and we'll have to call that even. So, yeah, and I think they take it. But look, I know I know these people well enough to know that they mean well, and they're genuinely nice people. Obviously, they wouldn't be my friends if they weren't. But I just feel that it's easier for them to side on the sympathetic cause of, let's say, the green movement or otherwise, than to not. But they tolerate me, so it is what it is. I don't try not to make enemies with anyone. I mean, I obviously disagree with a lot of the green movement in particular, but I can't see a point in butting heads with them, because you're not going to convince them to jump on board or even see our point of view. They're going to have a wall up, and you're going to have that mindset where what we do is wrong, and it'll be impossible to convince them of otherwise. And you know what? They could try and talk me out of hunting for as long as they had breath, and they're not going to talk me out of it. It's probably the same. And you got to understand us as people. We think differently and understand differently, and as a life we live, we each to their own. The fact that they attack us a fair bit is probably the negative side. Like, there's always an attack to try to ban what we do. I think at the end of the day, they are pretty organised and have built up over a number of years to a point of the strength that the Greens have now, particularly in politics. And I see it in Victoria, and not to say I don't see it here. We had a local council election here only a few weeks back, and there was more Green candidates than, well, no Liberal ones at all. There was literally Labor and Greens or independents to choose from. So it does show you that they've geared themselves up to be organised more so than we ever had, and we're our own worst enemy. Like we just touched on, we splinter ourselves into don't like the way they do things, and they don't do that thing. I do remember, and old enough to remember, a couple of big Parliament House marches for the gun lobby back in 1988. The one I remember well, when the Unsworth government was going to ban semi-autos originally. This is before, obviously, 96 happened. And collectively, there was over 100,000 people on this march. And I can vividly remember, the heads of the SSAA and Pistol Shooters Association, all these, let's call them, clay target associations, all these different splinter groups of firearms, holding all their hands up together in unity, saying that, we're going to form one strong party and no one's ever going to get the better of us. And basically, the Unsworth government got voted out off the shooters. You can research that all you like. They believe that the shooters was the one that prevented the Unsworth government getting back in. And I think the Griner government came in. But then Port Arthur happened in 96, and I think, as much as we want to cane the Liberals for changing the laws there, which they obviously did, I think a lot of that happened because John Howard had literally only just been elected. So he'd been elected, I believe, a month earlier, maybe 2 months earlier at most from when Port Arthur happened. And he had won by such a landslide that if ever he was going to implement gun laws to not affect him from a political point of view in numbers, that was the time to do it, because it all fell into place for him. He wasn't going to get unelected for another 3 years, and by then a lot of people would have calmed down. And he had such a huge majority that even if people turned on him, he was never going to lose that majority to be kicked out for his second term, which he wasn't. So the timing of everything was, unfortunately, at a point where even the Liberal government thought it was the right thing to do to ban the semi-automatics. And we've moved on from that now. I think, we're living a life in Australia where we still hunt and can still do the thing. Some of our gun laws are pretty stupid, particularly appearance laws and stuff like that. I don't agree with it all. And I happen to work in the gun trade, so I know most of the stuff pretty well. But if you went to America in particular, they think that, we don't have guns at all, which is certainly not the case. And you need to try to explain that to them when you go there. So no, there's just types of firearms that are under a restricted permit stone or licenses to have. But if you're a keen hunter and nothing's insurmountable, you can go and hunt, and plenty of firearms. So it's not as bad as people want to make out to be. Is it as good as it could have been or should have been? Probably not. But look, I think, we do have to be pragmatic as shooters, and as we get older, that although it's not ideal and we'd love to have, semi-autos to, particularly the shotguns, I think was a big mistake for them to have taken out of circulation. But are we better off without ARs? Well, I don't see huge advantage for the average guy. I can see where it can come in handy on a big mob of pigs and stuff like that, but I'm probably more of a foot hunter that likes to hunt on foot, and bolt action suits me 99% of the time. In fact, I think I owned a semi-auto 22 and a semi-auto shotgun. Never owned a semi-auto rifle in my life, so it didn't really affect me, and I'm sure it did affect other people, and I'm not trying to say that what they did was right. But I do also think the last thing we'd want to do is go down the path of what the Americans do, and every man and dog owns a gun, protect themselves against. I think we should all be able to protect ourselves, so let's not mix that up. But I don't think we should all be running around with bloody handguns in our back pockets while we're shopping and ARs behind the kitchen door for your kids to have access to. So, look, there's a fine line there. I'm not saying that I love our gun laws, because I don't. And trust me, I'll bring this up plenty of times. But on a scale of how much it's affected me personally, probably a lot less than you think, because I still have hunted plenty and probably used most of the firearms I would have used anyway, albeit maybe, a bit of shotgun shooting I would have definitely continued using a semi-auto, but so be it. Yeah. That's my opinion, at least, anyway.
Yeah, no, and I mean, it's one of the great things about the show. I love hearing everybody's opinions and just different versions. And while you're talking there, I was just thinking that, my best mate's wife is vegan, and my wife's one of her best friends is vegan as well. And especially my wife's best friend, we constantly talk about me hunting, and she has no issue with what I do after we had the dialogue and we had those conversations, and we have, I guess, a mutual respect to each other. And she didn't feel like that at the start of it, but she knows me as a person and that I'm, try and be the best person I can be, and understood the reasons I do it. And once I'd sort of explained to them and went through it, she wouldn't come hunting, but she is also not of the opinion that she wants me not to hunt as well. So I think it's a very nuanced discussion, and I don't think you can change people's points of view, but you can portray what you do in the best light possible in how you conduct yourself and why you do what you do. Because, as you said, I'm never going to become vegan, but I also can understand why some people do. And hey, if that's their choice, fair enough. I don't want to change you having that option, and sort of respect that same, expect that sort of same courtesy back, that just because you don't appreciate what I do doesn't mean you should stop it necessarily as well. So, all right, mate, before we wrap up the show, I want to hear about the elk, because they're something that's on my dream thing. I don't even know, I kept saying this, and I've been lucky enough to have a few of the US guests come on, and the bugle just sounds unreal. That, to me, in person, I think would top it. In saying that, haven't heard of Red. They're both on my list, and then hopefully one day get something on the deck. But those noises are unreal. What happened with the elk? Where'd you get that?
Well, I've actually shot two, so 2 separate years. 2010 was the first one I shot, and I don't know how much time I've got here, but I'll give you a quick rundown. So, with my work, I was asked to go over to the States to test out some products in the firearms industry. And part of this was they were going to take us on an elk hunt. Now, I was blown away that, one, I got the opportunity to do it. But more importantly, I'd always thought the elk, for some reason in my head, I thought pretty much most of the elk hunting in the US is behind wire, and behind wire hunting has never interested me at all. Again, I don't have opposed to people doing it, each to their own, but I'd always wanted to try to do my hunts free range. And the thought of hunting an elk behind wire, it just wasn't high on my list. But if someone's going to give me a hunt, well, I might go and do that. Well, as it turned out, we went out, tested this product, and then took it out in the field. And it wasn't a behind wire hunt. It was on literally private land adjoining public land, where a lot of elk resided on this property during the elk season, because the public lands were getting hammered by hunters, and a lot of them would refuge on this property. So the hunting actually was quite good. To cut to the chase on this one, because this is my smaller elk, and he's not a bad fella. I shot this guy at quite long distance for me. It was 499 meters, which was 540 yards. Being in America, they've measured everything in yards over there. But I did the conversion. It was 499. So basically a 500-meter shot, and shot this bull elk on a ridge line. It's on the wall.
Yep.
Now, that's the smaller one. Now, I was pretty happy when this fellow was on the ground. I caked him out myself, and I told the guys, look, I really want to take him back to Australia. Can we take him to a taxidermist, and we'll get him shipped at a later date? So took him to the taxidermist, and this is where things changed for me dramatically. Took it into that taxidermist, and I was almost embarrassed bringing that in compared to what was being bought in during that elk season. It was an absolute thumping elk that made mine look like a baby. Like, there's no other way to describe it. And mine wasn't a bad one when you don't have them others to compare it to. So I said, these been hunted, in preserves or enclosures or whatever you want to call high wire hunting. And the taxidermist said, yes, no, they're just up in the hill. I said, so these are just free range elk that roam the hills? Yes, yep. I'd say all of them here in Colorado. Others in Colorado. And that was it. I said, I've got to come back and shoot something like this. So me and a mate did a fair bit of research, and basically we came up with this outfitter in Montana who literally operates a horseback hunt on the fringe of Yellowstone. So you can't hunt in Yellowstone as it's a national park, but Yellowstone's renowned for certainly its population of elk. And he hunts literally the surrounds, but it is public land hunting. So there is other hunters that you do technically need to compete with. But because it's a wilderness area, no vehicles allowed in certain parts of that area, so everything has to be on horseback. So if you weren't hunting on horseback, you had to be hiking it in or a push bike. So to us, that was the best opportunity to hunt wild free country with quality sized elk, free range, on horseback, outfitter, blah, blah, blah. So we booked our hunt. A couple of years later, off we went to Montana. And look, I'm no horse rider, far from it. So they deliberately, and we had a tag for a mule deer each as well. So they deliberately hunted us in some lower country for the mule deer first to get used to riding the horse and see how good you were on the horse before they literally took you into some back country. And once we knocked over a mule deer each, off we went and got into some backcountry hunting. And look, we saw elk probably every day, but bulls were hard to come by. But having said that, there was a few hunters in camp with some monster elk being brought in, and I'm just mouth-watering to think that this could happen to us to get one each, whatever else. And we weren't hunting together. We both had our own guides, and we're basically hunting away from the base camp each day. Anyway, the cut to the chase, we actually had a 19-day hunt. And the reason the hunts were for so long was because elk that lived in the national park would only leave the park when the snow fell heavily, like literally up to the guts of the elk, where they couldn't feed and they had to move out of the park to get better feed. And so basically the hunts ran for 19 days in the hope that during those 19 days, and this was in November, so it's a little bit after the elk rut, you'd still hear the occasional bull elk bugling. Where I heard a lot of the bugles was in that first hunt, I should have said, in Colorado. But on this particular hunt, there wasn't so much about the bugling, although we did hear a few. It was about the snowfall. So when the blizzards finally did arrive, which for me was day 13 or 14 of the hunt, and you're losing a fair bit of confidence that you're going to go home with one now after 14 days, the blizzards hit and the elk literally moved out of the national park out of Yellowstone. And Warren Johnson, who ran the whole outfit there, he was pretty savvy sort of bloke when it came to elk, and he would basically scan the roads leading out of the park or the perimeter of the park in the middle of the night, finding hoof prints in the snow of where bull elk have just left. And he'd come back, tell his guides, say, right, this particular valley, head up here, 5 bulls walked out, blah, blah, blah. Well, to the letter of how it worked, he said there was a number of bull elk had moved out of this particular valley, head up there, try and get up as high as you can by dawn, and then by dawn, glass your way back towards, and somewhere in between the elk are going to be. And literally to the letter, that's exactly what happened. We spotted some big bulls feeding on the edge of this clearing, and we had to halve the distance. It was probably 1 kilometre away, and we probably halved the distance on horseback, tied the horses up, and then tried to stalk in a bit closer. And unbeknown to us at the time, some hunters were below these elk who had just then spooked the elk. So these elk actually ran towards us, and as it turned out, there were 7 huge bulls literally strung out one behind the other, and they were all within about 300 metres, maybe a little touch closer, for me to take a shot at. And I was quite confident of doing that. I'd practiced quite a bit to be able to take a shot at that distance. And I said to the guide, I said, which one do I take? There was no way I could judge these. They all look pretty impressive. Anyway, he says, that one at the back, which is where I had the crosshairs on, I must admit he probably stood out a little bit more. He says, that one at the back's the best one, take him. So I hit him with my 300. He rocked there for a bit, and I had to give him another one, and then he went spiralling down the hill like you'd probably see on a lot of videos, like Tar and Chamois, and I'm thinking, oh, that's going to snap a antler off for sure. Like he's just rolling out of control down the hill. Anyway, not long after he disappeared about down in the bushes below, we're back slapping, all pretty excited. A number of shots then rung out, and 2 more elk of those 7 that walked out single file went down. The guys that were hunting below us had shot those 2. Keeping in mind this is public land hunting. Anyway, as it turns out, these 2 guys were actually from the camp that we were staying in. Didn't realise we're all hunting the one lot of animals. And so as those guys were walking up to get to their bulls that they shot, I was walking down to get to my one. I walked past the elk that these gentlemen had shot, and I'm thinking, oh, shit, I must have shot the wrong one. These things are just monsters. I said, I've shot the wrong bloody bull. I said, surely mine can't be bigger than these. And they passed my bull on the way up to theirs, and they said to me, he goes, mate, you've got to see the bull you just shot. He's out of this world. Anyway, so I literally had to try to run down this steep hill to get to this bloody elk, and he was he was a thumper. He was as good as I could ever possibly have wished for. Proper 12-pointer, 6 on each side, just heavy. Probably could have been a bit longer. I'm really picking at straws here because after 14-day hunt, I thought I was going home empty-handed at one point and ended up shooting this monstrous, in the Bone and Crockett scoring system, to give someone a gauge that might understand it, it was a 350-inch bull. So, I couldn't have been happier. I caped him out as well. I was happy to do it myself. I'd done enough of it and give the guide a break. But then we had to pack all the meat out, so they all got strapped to the horse. And we took all the stuff out, as nothing's allowed to be left behind there in the States, in the hunting there, which I think is a great thing. And, that was a memorable day. That was definitely one not to forget as well. And, look, whenever you hear these elk bugling, it's spine-tingling, to say the least. In fact, in the Colorado hunt, it was just literally at the end of the bow hunting season, which is the peak of the rut. And when we were rifle shooting them, they were sort of tailing off a little bit. We could still hear them every day. The guide said to me, he goes, Tony, if you were here 2 weeks ago when the rut was in its peak, he goes, this one basin, which is where I did shoot this bull from, the first one, he goes, you would have counted 20 or 30 bugling at the one time. He goes, I had a doctor over here from Hawaii who comes every year bow hunting, and he'd take him out. And he goes, I had him within 10 or 15 metres of this bull that was wallowing and raking the ground and that. And he goes, the guy nearly passed out from excitement that this thing's screaming its head off in his face, basically, at 15 metres away. And I could only imagine how good that would be to be that close to a screaming bull elk. To the point that 2 years ago, I went over to Canada with my wife just on a scenic holiday. We drove right around, but I timed it to go through the guts of the rut, which was the middle of September. And we went through the towns of Banff and Jasper, which I'd seen on YouTube as a hot spot for elk to be racing through town chasing people during the rut. So we turned up there, and true to the elk's form, they were we got to watch them within 20, 30 metres screaming and bugling, and it's impressive. It's one of the best sounds in the world, no doubt about it. It's a fantastic thing, and I couldn't recommend it highly enough. Bloody horseback hunting elk is fantastic.
Unreal. Sounds like something I've got on the bucket list, that's for sure. Just got to...
stick that one on there, mate. It's definitely worth doing. Look, all the hunts I've done have been pretty good. Do I have favourites? Well, look, as you get older, the more memorable ones seem to be more recent. That's not to say I didn't like the older hunts, because they were fantastic too. But your brain's there to be full of memories, mate. You might as well fill them.
That's it.
And mine's pretty good. I'm pretty happy. I'm pretty content from a hunter's point of view, at least, anyway.
Oh, very nice. Hopefully I'll be the same when I get on in years. So, Tony, mate, really appreciate you coming on the show and giving up your time. So, mate, well done. Awesome story. Congrats again. I'm sure everyone, when they see it, they'll be in absolute awe like I am. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
No worries, Matt. Thank you, mate. Appreciate it. It's been great.
All right, listeners. Bye for now. You've been listening to the Australian Hunting and Beyond podcast with Matt. Thanks for tuning in, and can't wait to catch you next time. But in the meantime, if you want more, you can find it at linktr.ee/Australian Hunting and Beyond. That will give you our YouTube, Instagram, X, Facebook, you name it. We'll catch you next time.